film begins in a bar called a drop bar. It looks like an ordinary bar, but gangs use it to launder money. Cash moves in and out through secret couriers who take it to its final destination. The owners never know when their bar will be chosen as the drop site, which keeps it secure. In one of these bars, we meet the main character, a bartender named Bob Saginowski. Bob is a quiet man with a troubled past and a violent side hidden behind his calm look. The bar he works at is run by his cousin Marv, but is secretly owned by the Chechen Mafia. A group of older regulars often gather there to drink and talk. One night, as they raise their glasses to remember Richie Whalen, a friend who died mysteriously 10 years ago, Bob serves them another round. Marv scolded Bob, reminding him that the bar was a business, not a charity. His frustration grew when he found out Bob had let an elderly woman drink for free and smoke inside while he was gone. Bob thought he was just being kind, but in the end he listened to Marv. The audience learns that Bob is a devoted Catholic who often goes to church. One evening, on his way home, he heard cries coming from a neighbor's trash bin. Inside, he found a badly injured pit bull left to die. Just then, the homeowner, Nadia, stepped outside, curious about the stranger near her property. Bob explained what happened and asked Nadia to help the injured dog. Still wary, she asked for his ID and even took photos of the dog to send to her friends for safety. In the end, they brought the dog inside and treated its wounds. The dog had cuts and bruises from clear abuse, but luckily the injuries were not life-threatening. While talking, Bob noticed bruises on Nadia's neck. She worked as a waitress and had experience rescuing animals. They both agreed that a shelter wasn't the best option for the dog, especially since Bob was already attached to it. He convinced Nadia to look after the dog for a couple of days until he could take it home. Near the bar, two brothers argued nervously. They were planning to rob Marv's bar. The older brother was confident, saying they needed to prove themselves to their boss by taking risks. The younger brother, a drug addict, panicked when he found out the bar was really run by the Chechen Mafia. In the end, the older brother talked him into it. The scene then moves to the bar where two masked men strike just before closing. They point their guns and force Marv to put money in a bag. Marv stayed calm and warned them they were robbing the wrong people, but he still had no choice except to obey. During the robbery, Bob noticed one of the men wearing a broken watch. After it was over, they found the bar employee, Randy, beaten to death in the backyard. Soon after, Detective Torres arrived to investigate. He recognized Bob from church, where they had seen each other for years but never talked. During the investigation, Bob had little to share since the robbers wore masks. He did mention a broken watch that had stopped at 6:15. The stolen money was about $5,000. Beyond the crime, Detective Torres grew curious about why Bob never took communion at church, though Bob at first denied it. When Torres pushed, Bob denied everything. In reality, he was ashamed of his past and avoided communion to escape confession. At the same time, Marv grew angry after learning Bob had mentioned the broken watch, fearing it might provoke the Chechens. Later, Bob took the puppy home and asked Nadia to join him at the pet store since he had never owned a dog before. Nadia picked out bowls, a leash, waste bags, and a care guide. Bob suggested naming the dog Rocco, though he actually liked the name Mike. Nadia preferred Rocco, saying Mike wasn't a good name for a dog. They made a name tag for Rocco, though Bob still believed Mike was a better name. The next morning at church, he was surprised to see a statue of Saint Rocco with a dog. After shopping, Bob drove Nadia home, not realizing that a thug named Eric Deeds was secretly watching them from a distance. One morning, while the cousins were shoveling snow in the backyard, Chavka, the Chechen Mafia boss and true owner of the bar, showed up. He revealed that he had captured one of the robbers. The man had been gagged, tortured, and had his foot pierced and bolted to the floor of a van. Chavka asked Marv and Bob if they knew the man, but both said no. He then demanded to know how the police had learned about the broken watch, and Bob was forced to apologize. Before leaving, Shavka warned Marv to recover the stolen money. Marv felt the pressure, as if Chavka believed he was involved in the robbery and knew how to get it back. During the investigation, Detective Torres learned that Marv had lost the bar to Papa Umarov, Chavka's father and a Chechen mafia boss, 10 years earlier. He spoke about it with a colleague from the Major Crime Unit, asking if they planned to go after Papa. The colleague said the group was too powerful to bring down and joked that Torres was welcome to try prosecuting them himself. Bob enjoyed having Rocco as his companion, but as a first-time dog owner, he struggled with the mess. Rocco often urinated around the house, forcing Bob to clean constantly. One morning at the dog park, while Bob played with Rocco, he ran into Nadia exercising nearby. She had just lost her night shift job and offered to care for Rocco for some extra income. Attracted to Nadia, Bob accepted her offer, and they exchanged contact information. Afterward, Eric Deeds showed up and complimented Bob's dog. Uneasy with him, Bob quickly walked away with Rocco. Meanwhile, Marv lived with his sister Dottie, while their father stayed in a nursing home, brain dead and kept alive by machines. The siblings talked about their father's condition. Tired of the high cost of care, Dottie suggested ending his life so they could live freely, even travel to Europe. Marv strongly disagreed, insisting they should stay devoted to their father, even if it meant giving up their own comfort. Marv met Fitz, one of the robbers, and confronted him about the crime. He blamed Fitz for his brother's stupidity with the broken watch and for beating Randy so badly that Marv had to call an ambulance and bring in the police. Marv warned that their bar would soon be ruined and told Fitz to make the next robbery cleaner. Elsewhere, a suspicious man in a car asked Marv for directions to the hospital. Marv told him but remained cautious. Meanwhile, at Bob's house, he talked to Rocco and apologized for not taking him outside. Then came a knock at the door. It was Eric, who rudely let himself in. Eric asked about the dog, which left Bob confused. He claimed the dog was his, but Bob disagreed. Eric said that if Bob really owned it, he should have the chip number and legal papers. He explained that the chip was implanted in the dog's body to identify its owner. Eric showed the chip's serial number, suggesting he was the real owner. Bob refused, saying Rocco was his and reminding Eric that he had abused the dog. Eric then threatened to call the police. When Bob asked what he wanted, Eric gave only vague threats, talking about the weather before taking Bob's umbrella and leaving. Bob and Nadia grew closer thanks to Rocco. At a cafe, Nadia admitted Bob was the first person who never asked about the bruises on her neck. Bob felt it was her private matter and not his place to judge. Still, Nadia eventually shared her troubled past. While high on drugs, Nadia once cut her own throat with a potato peeler, hating her addiction and wanting to die. She miraculously survived and started living a more normal, meaningful life. Meanwhile, at the bar, Marv told Bob he was afraid of the strange man who had asked for directions, worried that his life was in danger. Marv was still haunted by losing the bar to Chavka Umarov nearly 10 years earlier. His self-hatred ran deep and shaped his life. One day, Bob was shocked to find a severed hand and a blood-stained bill in a trash bag. The stolen money had been returned, along with the robber's broken watch and the hand. They were left confused, unsure who had returned the money or why. Bob carried the severed hand into the bar and wrapped it skillfully, impressing Marv with how naturally he did it, as if he had done it many times before. Just then, Eric suddenly walked in because they had forgotten to lock the door. Marv tried to send Eric away, saying the bar was closed. When Bob almost got caught, Eric just greeted him and left, still curious about them. Marv grew uneasy about Bob's link to Eric. When Bob explained that Eric claimed to own Rocco, Marv became even more worried. Eric turned out to be a local thug rumored to have killed Richie Whalen, the man they toasted at the start of the film. Marv told Bob that Eric had spent time in prison and in a mental institution, warning him to stay away. But Bob seemed more surprised than afraid by the news. He put the severed hand in a cloth bag and left. After Bob walked away, Marv broke down in tears and began cleaning the blood from the money to give it to the Chechens. Meanwhile, Bob played with Rocco and threw the bandaged hand into the river. Detective Torres then approached him and asked if he knew Eric Deeds, but Bob denied it. The Chechens later came to the bar to collect the stolen money. Chavka also announced that the bar would serve as a drop site on Super Bowl night. Around the same time, Eric confronted Bob, asking about Nadia and whether she had hurt herself recently. Soon after, Bob asked Nadia about her past with Eric. The investigation scared Nadia, and she ran off, leaving Bob confused. Meanwhile, Marv met Fitz, who asked for a ride. Fitz was terrified after losing his brother in a similar way. He checked Marv's trunk to see if it was lined with plastic and pulled out a pistol. But when Marv opened the trunk, it was completely empty. Fitz was satisfied and got into the car to drive away. Marv suggested robbing the bar on Super Bowl night when a large amount of cash would be there, but Fitz refused, saying he only wanted to survive. Marv told him to get out of the car and close the trunk. As Fitz nervously obeyed, Marv rammed into him again and again, killing him instantly. Marv left, switched cars, and drove away. In the next scene, Bob and Nadia made up, and she apologized for how she had acted earlier. She admitted she once dated Eric. At first, he seemed kind, but she later realized how dangerous he was and broke up with him. Nadia warned Bob that Eric was the one who killed Richie Whalen, but Bob already knew. Later, Marv met Eric in a diner and said Bob was afraid of him. Eric replied that he wanted more respect from Bob or there would be trouble. Marv reassured him, saying he had a plan that would work for everyone. Marv had actually planned to use Fitz for the Super Bowl heist instead of Eric, hoping to keep Eric distracted and away from Bob. Meanwhile, Detective Torres met an old colleague and got Eric's psychiatric file, where one detail stood out to him. At home, Bob called for Rocco, but got no reply. Bob found Rocco safe inside a wooden crate, along with his umbrella, proving Eric had been there. He confronted Eric, told him to stay away, and made it clear he would not give Rocco back. Eric demanded $10,000 if Bob wanted to keep the dog, but Bob refused, saying it was too much. Later, Marv told Bob he wouldn't be at the bar during the Super Bowl. Bob suspected that Marv was planning a reckless scheme they could never pull off. Marv, still obsessed with the respect he lost after giving up the bar to Chavka, grew angry. He became paranoid, thinking Bob gave his old stool to an old woman to embarrass him. Bob explained it was just an ordinary stool with no special meaning. At the bar, Bob hid $10,000, Rocco, and a pistol in the basement. Meanwhile, Eric broke into Nadia's home and forced her to go with him to Marv's bar. She resisted at first, but gave in to avoid angering him. That night, they arrived together, leaving Bob disappointed and Nadia filled with shame. Marv called Eric, but he was already at the bar after hearing the commotion. Marv warned him not to underestimate Bob, who seemed quiet and polite, but was unpredictable. Then he lined his trunk with plastic, drove to the bar, and parked 2 blocks away to watch. All night, different mafia crews arrived to deliver money. At last, the bar was empty, except for Eric and Nadia. Before stepping out for a cigarette, Eric gave Nadia a gun. Crying, she warned Bob that Deeds planned to kill him. Bob offered to pay for Rocco, but Eric asked how much Nadia was worth and demanded the money be locked in the safe. Bob refused and revealed that he, not Eric, had killed Richie Whalen. He explained that Marv was addicted to gambling, and Richie was only one of many who owed him money. Even after Richie won at the casino and repaid his debt, it wasn't enough. To cover up the fact that Marv had already taken the payment, Bob shot Richie twice in the face. Bob shot Eric twice in the face. He told Nadia she was safe and free to go. The Chechens later disposed of Eric's body, and Chavka gave the bar to Bob, renaming it Bob's Bar. Outside, Marv was killed and Detective Torres arrived to investigate. Torres spoke about the upcoming sale of the church and suspected Bob was tied to Richie Whalen's murder and Eric's disappearance. Bob then brought Rocco to Nadia's house, apologized for his past, and explained he killed Eric to stop future blackmail. Nadia felt both fear and love for him, and they agreed to start seeing each other.